Hello, I'm Professor Lloyd and I want to welcome you to ASL 115. In this first lecture, I'm going to be discussing everything you need to know about fingerspelling. Fingerspelling can also be called the manual alphabet. Each letter is signed with only one hand and has its own hand shape. Before we begin, it is important to know which hand to use. When you fingerspell and sign, you should use your dominant hand. For most people, this will be the hand that you write with. I'm right-handed, so I will use my right hand as my dominant hand. This will be the hand that I fingerspell everything with, as well as the hand that I use as the dominant hand when I sign two-handed signs. Regardless of which hand that you choose to use, you need to be consistent with your choice. Consistency in your dominant hand means that you, during a single conversation, will only use one hand as dominant. This means that you cannot sign one word with your left hand and then fingerspell a word with your right hand. For example, sometimes when I am with a friend who is deaf, I have something in my dominant hand, but would like to say something. Imagine that I'm carrying my laptop in my dominant hand. I could then use my non-dominant hand, which for me is my left hand, in order to sign something. For that conversation, I would stick with my left hand as dominant for the sake of consistency. Then, when I arrive at my meeting and set my laptop down, I would go back to signing with my right hand. Now, the next thing you need to know about fingerspelling is how to position your hand. One easy way that you can do this is to pretend that you are raising your hand and then lower your arm until your elbow is resting comfortably at your side. Your palm should be facing forward away from your body. Although American Sign Language only uses one hand to make each of the hand shapes for the manual alphabet, I want you to practice the alphabet with both hands. The reason for this is that it helps you become accustomed to spelling with either hand. Then, in the case that you need to use your non-dominant hand, as in my earlier example, you are able to do so because your non-dominant hand is familiar with and accustomed to signing the hand shapes. Now that we've discussed the basics behind fingerspelling, let's get to fingerspelling. For your A, your fingertips should be resting against your palm but not curled in. Check that you can see your fingernails. Be sure that your fingers are held lightly against your palm rather than in a firm fist. For your B, you will rest your four fingers gently against each other. They do not need to be held tightly or firmly, but they should be touching so that they do not look like the number 4. Tuck your thumb in next to your index finger so that it doesn't stick out. B. For your C, you should see a backward C from your perspective. Your thumb may round up or it may lean out a bit farther. Either is fine as long as your C makes a round shape and your fingers do not curl in and look like an E. For your D, when you make your D, I want you to think about pointing to the dog, and you need to check and make sure that there is a donut hole in the middle. Your D should not be a fist, as in the number 1. D. For your E, bend your thumb and fold your fingers down so that your fingertips rest on top of your thumb. Be sure that they do not cover your thumb or your thumb does not cover them. E. For your F, the hand shape somewhat resembles a paper fan. Your fingers should be extended straight and separate from each other. F. For your G, your palm should be facing in and your finger pointing across your body. Your thumb and your finger will stay about an inch apart and your hand will stay horizontal. G. For your H, the only difference between G and H is that you are using an index finger as well as your middle finger. Again, make sure that your palm is facing in and your fingers are pointing across your body. Your thumb and finger will stay about an inch apart and your hand will stay horizontal. H. I. For your I, your thumb will wrap around the front of your fingers and your pinky finger will be straight up. If you do not wrap your thumb around, it will look too much like a Y. I. For your J, you will start off just like an I, but you will turn your hand from palm facing out to palm facing in, just like you're turning a doorknob. This letter is a moving letter and does not require you to keep your wrist still. J. J. For the letter K, your index finger will be pointing straight up and your middle finger will be at a 45-degree angle forward with your thumb between the two fingers. K. For the letter L, your thumb and pointer finger should be fully extended. If you're unable to fully extend them to begin with, maybe a little closer to here, then continue to practice and do your best. L. For the letter M, your index, middle, and ring fingers will rest as mountains on or over your thumb, while your pinky finger rests against your palm. It is important that your fingers are lightly touching rather than making a tight fist. M. For the letter N, your index and middle fingers will rest on or over your thumb. Your ring and pinky fingers will rest against your palm. It is important that your fingers are lightly touching rather than in a tight fist. N. For the letter O, all of your fingers should come together with your thumb and should form a round O rather than a flat one. O. For the letter P, the P will be just like a K but upside down. The middle finger will be pointing straight down and your index finger will be at a 45-degree angle forward with your thumb between the two fingers. P. For the letter Q, your palm should be facing in and your index finger and thumb pointing straight down. Your thumb and finger will stay about an inch apart and your hand will be vertical. Q. For the letter R, your middle finger will cross or lay lightly over your index finger, and your thumb will rest across your ring and pinky fingers. R. For the letter S, your thumb will be wrapped around the front of your fingers. S. For the letter T, your pointer finger will wrap over your thumb and your thumb will be sticking through. T. For the letter U, your middle finger will rest against your index finger and your thumb will rest across your ring and pinky fingers. U. For the letter V, your middle finger and index finger will be separated while your thumb rests across your ring and pinky fingers. V. For the letter W, your pinky finger will slide behind your thumb and you will fully extend your pointer, middle, and ring fingers so that they are separate. W. For the letter X, you will wrap your thumb across your fingers and scrunch your index finger. X. For the letter Y, extend your thumb and pinky fingers as wide as you are comfortably able to. As you practice, it will become easier, but even this would be fine for the time being. Y. For the letter Z, start on your left side in the air and then draw the Z regardless of which hand you use. Z. Now that we've covered all of the letters, we need to discuss two areas of fingerspelling, expressive and receptive. Expressive fingerspelling is the action of fingerspelling a word to another person. To start with, you want to be sure that your elbows are resting comfortably at your sides. Rather than moving your hand from left to right like you do when you are writing a word, you are going to leave your arm in one place. You are also going to hold your arm still rather than bounce up and down when you spell. If it helps, you can imagine that you just stuck your arm in concrete. If you need an additional reminder when you first start, you can also use your non-dominant hand to hold your elbow in place, but be sure to take it off so that you can practice with both hands once you get used to it. When you have a double letter in a word, you will treat it a bit differently. There are two options. You can either slightly bounce or slide the letter away from your body. If you choose to bounce, you will barely open your hand and move over about a half an inch before reforming the letter. When you slide the letter, you will leave the letter formed. Let's try an example. The word cool, for instance, C-O-O-L. Note that you will form the C and the first O in the same place without moving, but will move the second O slightly to the right either by sliding C-O-O-L or by bouncing C-O-O-L. You want to avoid signing C-O-O-L. Cool or cool? This brings up an important point. When you do have to bounce or slide within a word, you do have to move your hand. At the end of each word, to show that it is a separate word, you will also move over. For this, you need to know which direction to move. Check that you are moving your hand to the outside when you have a double letter rather than across your body. When you are fingerspelling multiple words, you will also move your hand away from your body a slight space. For example, when I fingerspell my name, Courtney Lloyd, I will fingerspell the word Courtney all in the same spot, making sure to hold the first and the last letter, and then I will move over a slight space to my L, which will already be fully formed, and then move over a slight space for my double L to the O-Y-D. For example, notice that I am moving away from my body. This brings up an important point for both fingerspelling and signing. You know that when you have a double letter within a word, or are moving over a slight space between words, you will move away from your body. Because my right hand is my dominant hand, I will always move away from my body to the right side. If you are left-handed, you will always move away from your body to the left side. This also applies to the direction toward which a sign moves. It's helpful to think in terms of away from your body or across your body rather than left and right. Let's try an example. This is the sign Lord. Notice that my dominant hand starts across my body and is touching my non-dominant shoulder and then is brought down to my dominant side. Again, if I am left-handed, my dominant hand starts across my body and is touching my non-dominant shoulder and then is brought to my dominant side. Let's get back to expressive fingerspelling. When fingerspelling, you need to slightly pause after the first letter of your word and then blend the rest of the letters together. Now you still need to form each of the letters fully so that they're completely recognizable, but you do need to loosen up a bit so that they flow together. Think of it like the difference between a rubber stamp that you are stamping onto the paper and writing cursive. In printing, you make each letter separate and then you move on to the next letter. In cursive, you fully form your first letter and then move through the rest of the letters and they are connected and run together. You can still tell them apart, but they are more blended together. For example, the word California. If I spell it out very clearly, it will look like this. In a normal conversation, it will look more like this. I know it looks difficult now, and it will definitely take some time, but you'll get there. Now on to receptive fingerspelling. Receptive fingerspelling means that you are watching someone else fingerspell. When you first learn to fingerspell, the tendency is to try to identify each hand shape. Rather than saying the letters, though, I want you to start making a good habit of sounding out the words just as you would when you see an unfamiliar word. When you see someone fingerspell B-A-N-K, bank, rather than saying B-A-N-K, I want you to say ba-n-k. Then, when you get to the end of the word, you are able to recognize the word rather than trying to recall the string of letters that you said. Another reason it is helpful to sound out words is that sometimes you miss a letter or even multiple letters, or the person fingerspelling may have spelled the word incorrectly. Using our previous example, let's say that you missed the letter in bank. If you were saying the letters as I spelled it, you would come up with B-A-K. And then you would have to try to go back in your mind and sound it out and figure out what letters could fit into the space that you missed. If you were sounding it out, you would have said ba-a-k. From there, you could think about the context of our conversation. I happened to be talking about depositing my paycheck, from which you could infer that I had spelled bank. Now that we've covered these different points that you need to know for fingerspelling, you need to start practicing. Some people like to practice the words that they see around them. This might be a good thing to do when you're waiting in line, sitting in the drive-thru, or doing something else that gives you a little bit of downtime. Another way to practice your fingerspelling is to identify a category of words like vegetables or movie titles, etc. You could even fingerspell the lyrics to a favorite song. For expressive fingerspelling practice, I recommend working with a partner as well as practicing with the resources that I have included in the week. Be sure to continue to perfect your fingerspelling as you will use fingerspelling in every conversation, whether you are a Day 1 ASL student or an advanced signer. Know that in a regular conversation, those fluent in ASL spell very quickly. While you're not there yet, know that you need to continue to stretch yourself or you will never grow. So don't look away when you see fast fingerspelling or decide that it's unimportant because you can't catch it. Using what you've learned in this lecture, you can increase your speed, accuracy, and the ability to understand what another person is spelling. Congrats on finishing your first ASL 115 lecture.